So in case you haven't seen my last 2 videos, I've been traveling a lot more than I recently do. I went to New York and I went to Boston. And believe it or not, it was actually my second time flying alone, which for me is kind of a big deal. The first time I flew alone was back in April, and I was terrified. And in preparation for my flight and kind of to calm my nerves, I went on YouTube and I looked up tips for flying alone. And believe it or not, I really didn't find many videos. There were tons of videos on tips for flying for the first time, but I had already flown many times before that with my family. I was really looking for something that would ease my nerves about flying by myself for the first time. And not only flying, but navigating the airport by myself for the first time. So I think I can officially say I've conquered my fear, and today I'm making the video that I wish I had. So here are my tips for when you're flying alone for the first time. The first tip, or rather suggestion I would give, is comparing checked bags versus carry-ons. You have to kind of compare and contrast the differences between the two and see which suits your needs better when you're flying. So when you're checking your bags, for instance, there are a lot of benefits that can come from it. As soon as your bag is checked, you really don't have to worry about anything until you land and get to the carousel. So that means no lifting and getting an overhead space, no lugging it around the airport. It kind of just clears up some space in your mind. But on the other side of it, there are some downsides to checking your bag. Firstly, you're gonna have to pay to check your bag. And not only that, but there is the 50-pound limit. So if you know that you either have a lot of things you have to bring or a few things but are very heavy, you have to pick and choose what you can fit. Because once you exceed 50 pounds, now you have extra fees to pay for it. The other side of it is waiting for your bag. On my flight home back to Florida recently, I was waiting for like 30 minutes at the carousel for my bag to come along, and it was annoying. I wanted to go home at that point, and I had to wait here in this sea of people that are all trying to get their bags too. People can be ruthless in the airports. The airport is not a warm, welcoming place. I like to get in there and out of there as fast as I can. So 9 out of 10 times, I like to carry my bag on. Another downside, but not really likely, is the risk of losing your bag. But you do get a receipt when you check your bag. In case it does get lost, you have the proof that it was checked. It can either hopefully be located or you can be reimbursed for everything that was in your bag. So always keep that receipt. If checking a bag doesn't sound appealing to you, you can carry a bag on. Good thing about carrying a bag on, in my opinion, you get right off the plane. You don't have to worry about waiting. As soon as you get to your destination, you can go. Whether you're coming home or going somewhere, once you land, you kind of just want to get there. Your bag can't get lost because it's with you at all times. And most airlines do offer one free carry-on. So if you have a budget, that's probably going to be a better option for you. A little tip though, 9 out of 10 times when you get to your gate, they're going to offer to check your bag for free because they always need people to check their bags in case there's too many suitcases on the plane. But that's a risk because there's no guarantee, but they're kind of is. Do it at your own risk. But for me, the biggest stress of carrying on is worrying about getting my overhead space. It's not a huge deal if you don't get the space directly above you, but if you have a bag that's pretty common looking, you want to make sure that nobody else accidentally grabs it when the flight's over. Carry-on is also smaller than a checked bag, of course, so you have to consolidate more or possibly nix-say some items that you wanted to bring. You just have to be more conservative with what you choose to bring with you on your trip. You really just have to gauge how long you'll be gone for, how much clothing you'll need, and what the temperature is in the place that you're going. If it's hot, your clothes are going to be thinner, you can fit more in. If it's cold and you need a coat, that significantly cuts in half the space that you're gonna have in your carry-on, and it might be better to then check it back. Just weigh out the pros and the cons and see what works best for you. Tip number 2, be informed and prepared about all details of your flight. Firstly, I would recommend to have your seat beforehand. Most airlines offer different fares depending on the ticket you get, so make sure you're aware of what your fare includes when you're buying it online. The lowest fares on airlines typically don't offer a lot of benefits. Most of the time, if you are getting the lowest fare, your seat is going to be assigned to you at the gate. If you don't care about that, then that's fine. You could save a little bit of money and you don't have to worry about it. But if you're anything like me and you want to know where you're sitting, then it might be worth it to pay a few extra dollars to get a better fare, to pick your seat ahead of time. You'll be good regardless, you'll have a seat, but that was definitely a stress that I personally wanted alleviated. In terms of your boarding pass, you can of course get them on your phone, but I always recommend to print a paper boarding pass too. In case for any reason you can't get on your phone, it's not a bad idea to have a tangible copy of the pass. And know your flight. It's not a bad idea to know your flight number. If you're in the airport and an announcement is made, you can keep an ear open if you hear your flight number. It's not a bad idea to know how long you'll be in the air for. And me personally, I just like to know my flight information. It makes me feel more comfortable about getting on the plane. But I also am a different case because I get more nervous about flying than maybe other people do. But we'll get into that in just a bit. My third tip is be comfortable. I think this is probably something that goes without saying, but make sure you're comfortable on the flight, dress comfortably. It'll make you feel better, it'll make the flight go by faster. And something still relatively new with flying is that we have to wear masks in the airport. The first time I flew after the pandemic, I wore an N95 because I heard it was a good mask, but it was so uncomfortable. And you do have to keep it on pretty much the whole flight. Flight attendants are going up and down the aisles and they will check. So you want to make sure you're wearing something that you're not miserable in. I go with a cloth mask. Feels much better. And airplanes filter 99% of the germs in the air anyways, so I think you'll be good regardless of the mask that you wear. But I'm not a scientist or a doctor, so don't quote me. My final tip is regarding turbulence. This is what I was most worried about for my first time flying alone. I hate turbulence. I honestly have kind of a bit of a fear of airplanes. Not so much anymore, but for a very long time, I was deathly afraid of airplanes. Turbulence freaks me out. I don't like it. The only thing that really started to make me feel better about turbulence and feel safer in the air was thinking about how many flights go out every single day. And the fact that planes are built to withstand the turbulence. Pilots are trained to either avoid it or fly through it safely. Honestly, the more you encounter turbulence, the more you'll become comfortable with it. But if it really is something that you're terrified of and want to avoid at all costs, fly either at night or early in the morning. I find that night flights are always pretty smooth. And of course, keep tabs on the weather. You can't change the weather, but to be aware of it might make you feel just a little bit better. All right, so those are all my tips. I hope you found them helpful, and I hope you have a safe flight.